Imagine a force that brought China to its knees, burned the cities of Rus, and crushed Baghdad. The most terrifying military machine in human history. A force that knew no defeat. It seemed unstoppable. But one day, this invincible giant walked into a place from which there is no return. In this video, you will learn how 500 formidable warships and the elite of a conquering army were turned into a pile of smoking wreckage in just a single day. We will tell you why the heir to a great emperor, dreaming of glory, was forced to save his life by hiding in a tight copper pipe like a cornered rat. What kind of diabolical trap lay hidden beneath the murky waters of a tropical river? What fatal mistake did the generals make, mistaking a deadly snare for easy prey? And how did a handful of people, using ordinary wood and knowledge of the tides, create a living hell for the strongest army in the world? Get ready. This is not a story about a heroic battle, but about the total, brutal, and shameful humiliation of an empire that believed too much in its own invulnerability. Watch until the end to see how pride drowns in blood and ash. How much is pride worth? For an emperor, it is just a line in a chronicle, a correction in a tax ledger. But for a small nation standing in the path of an empire, the price of pride is total destruction, scorched earth, oblivion. Imagine you were standing on the shores of the Gulf of Tonkin. The air here is thick, humid, smelling of salt and rotting seaweed. But this spring, something else mixes with the scent of the sea. The smell of imminent death. On the horizon, where the sky usually meets the water, a wall rises. It is not a storm front. It is sails. Hundreds of sails. Thousands. A wooden city floating on the waves to grind your civilization into dust. It was the spring of the year 1288. The world froze. The most terrifying military machine in human history, the Mongol Empire, had come to collect its debts. They were not used to hearing the word no. They had conquered the steppes, burned the cities of Rus, brought China to its knees, and crushed Baghdad. Their horses trampled Europe. And here? Here was some patch of jungle that dared to snap back. Dai Viet, Vietnam. For the Yuan dynasty and for Kublai Khan personally, this was no longer just a war for territory. It was personal. It was a matter of prestige. Twice they had tried to take these lands. Twice the jungle had spit them back out, beaten and humiliated. There could be no mistake a third time. The empire does not forgive humiliation. This time, they were prepared. Look at this armada. An invasion fleet under the command of Prince Togan, the son of the emperor. A man who does not need to prove his strength, but who desperately needs to prove his usefulness. He is leading not just an army. This is a floating leviathan. 500 warships, 70 huge transport vessels bloated with grain and weapons, tens of thousands of soldiers, Mongol cavalry, Chinese infantry, mercenaries, engineers, archers, the cream of the conquerors of Asia. Do you hear that sound? That is not thunder. It is the drums of war, beating in unison on hundreds of decks. A sound that makes a normal person's blood run cold and their legs give way. Can you feel that vibration? It is the march of the doomed. But they do not know it yet. They are confident. Oh, how confident they are. Look at their faces. There is no fear in them, only boredom and the anticipation of easy loot. For them, this is not a battle. It is a punitive expedition, a safari. They look at the murky waters of the Bach River and see only open gates into the heart of the country. They see gold, slaves, and glory. They think their main enemy is pathetic Vietnamese soldiers with bamboo spears. What a fatal, monstrous mistake. Arrogance is a drug, and Togan is high on it right now. He looks at the map and sees arrows pointing to the capital. He thinks he is in control of the situation, but he forgot that on foreign soil, even water can be an enemy. He sees the river as a road, but the Bach Dang River is not a road. It is a throat, and it is ready to close. Now let's transport ourselves to the other bank, to the headquarters of the Vietnamese command. There is no panic here. It would seem that upon seeing such an armada, any reasonable general should give the order to evacuate, burn the archives, and run to the mountains. But Tran Hung Dao does not run. This man is cut from a different cloth. If the Mongols are fire, all-consuming and furious, then he is a stone. A cold, wet, slippery stone against which waves crash. He looks at the same river as Togan, but he sees something completely different. He is not counting the enemy's ships. He is counting the hours. He is watching the moon. He is listening to the tide. In his hands there is no trembling, as he unrolls scrolls with intelligence reports. The enemy is strong, his advisors say. Their fleet blocks out the sun. Tran Hung Dao just smirks. Do you know what he says? It is not the bravado of a madman. It is the cold cynicism of a surgeon looking at a patient and knowing exactly where to make the incision so that he bleeds out in a matter of minutes. In his proclamation to the officers, his voice sounds not like a plea for salvation, but like the sentence of a tribunal. He asks his people, "Do you want to live as slaves, groveling before barbarians whose horses are cramped in our rice fields? Or do you want their bones to become fertilizer for our land?" It is a harsh choice, and he knows the answer. Dai Viet cannot win in a fair fight. Let's be realistic. If the Mongol cavalry lands on solid ground and deploys into battle formation, Vietnam is finished. This is the mathematics of war. Mass multiplied by speed and discipline. In an open field, the Mongols are invincible. Their bows shoot farther, their sabers are sharper, their tactics honed by decades of slaughter from the Danube to the Yellow Sea. So, there will be no fair fight. Tran Hung Dao understands. To kill a giant, you cannot play by his rules. You cannot strike him in the chest. You have to make him stumble. You have to turn his strength into his weakness. A huge fleet? Excellent. That means they are clumsy. Heavy ships with a deep draft? Magnificent. That means they depend on the water level. They want a quick victory? We will give them the illusion of that victory. The general looks at the murky brown water of the Bach Dang River. For the invaders, it is just water. Dirty, warm, full of silt. But for the Vietnamese, it is a living being. It breathes. Twice a day, the river's chest heaves with the tide, hiding all the secrets of the bottom. And twice a day, it exhales with the ebb, exposing the essence. The Yuan Empire brought with it 1,288 problems. But Tran Hung Dao has one solution: nature. Have you ever wondered what a general feels sending men to their deaths not with swords, but with axes and logs? Not into an attack, but into the mud. While the Mongols polish their armor and anticipate triumph, the Vietnamese disappear into the mangrove thickets. They vanish into the fog. Togan, on his flagship, surely decorated with silk and gold, feels like the master of the world. He sees small Vietnamese boats looming in the distance, like frightened minnows before a shark. "Look how they run!" his officers laugh. "Cowards! They aren't even trying to defend the river mouth." Laughter echoes over the water. Loud, guttural laughter of winners who have not yet won the fight. They do not understand one simple thing. In this war, territory is not the prize. It is the weapon. The Mongol armada enters the mouth of the Bach River. Sails fill with wind. Oars foam the water. A huge, heavy, clumsy mass of wood and flesh is drawn into the narrow channel. They go in a tight formation, board to board, confident in their invulnerability. They look like a herd of buffalo entering a river to drink, not noticing that the water around them is already teeming with crocodiles. Only these crocodiles are not made of flesh and blood. They are made of ironwood, and they are waiting for their moment. None of the Mongols look closely at the water, and that is a pity. If they had looked closely, if they had known what this murky stream hides at high tide, their hearts would stop from horror right now. But they are looking at the banks. They are looking for the enemy there. But the enemy is under the keel. Tran Hung Dao did not just deploy troops. He set the stage for the greatest magic trick in military history. Only, instead of a rabbit from a hat, he is going to pull out a catastrophe. The Vietnamese know the tide schedule better than their own names. They know that now the water is high. It is kind. It is welcoming. It lets the ships deep inland, lulling the captain's vigilance. "Come in," the river seems to whisper. "It is deep here. It is safe here." It is a lie. Togan gives the order to increase speed. He has reported that the main Vietnamese forces are retreating. Another tactical retreat? Or a panicked flight? He doesn't care. He needs Tran Hung Dao's head on a pike. He needs Hanoi at his feet. Greed blinds his eyes. Tunnel vision is the disease of all dictators and conquerors. He sees the target, but he does not see the trap. Tension hangs in the air, thick as before a storm. Seagulls cry anxiously, circling over the masts. The wind changes direction. But the inertia of the huge machine is already too great. It is impossible to stop. Thousands of tons of wood and people are rushing toward their fate. And at this time, deep in the jungle, away from the eyes of Mongol lookouts, thousands of hands wipe sweat from their faces. Thousands of eyes look at the river with grim satisfaction. The work is done. The stage is built. The actors have taken their places. All that remains is to wait for the curtain to rise. Or, in this case, for it to fall along with the water level. While the fleet, shining with splendor and power, bites deep into the territory, under the murky surface of the river, in silence and darkness, slumbers a secret capable of breaking the empire's spine. A secret that will turn greatness into ruins, and a triumphal march into a bloodbath. No one warned Togan that entry into this river is free, but for the exit, he will have to pay with everything he has. And the tax collector has already started his countdown. Great catastrophes do not happen suddenly. They are built, brick by brick, mistake by mistake, or, as in our case, log by log. While Mongol generals drank kumis and divided the skin of the unkilled Dai Viet tiger, in the Red River Delta, something was happening that modern military analysts would call an engineering miracle, and simple soldiers, a penal hell. Let's rewind time a little back. Several months before the horizon turned black with enemy sails. Have you ever tried to lift a log of ironwood? The Vietnamese call it lim. This is not just wood. It is organic steel. It is so dense that it sinks in water like a stone. It does not rot for decades. An axe bounces off it, striking sparks, and saws go dull in half an hour. And it was this material that Tran Hung Dao chose for his fundamental argument in the dispute with the empire. The general understood. Beating the Mongols on water is suicide. Their ships are taller, their hulls are thicker, their boarding teams are more experienced. That means he needs to make the water stop being water.
He needs to turn the liquid medium into a solid death, ripping open the bottoms.
Imagine the logistics of this operation. This is not building a temple where you can make noise and be proud of the work. This is the secret construction project of the century. Thousands of peasants and soldiers, knee-deep or even chest-deep in fetid, viscous silt, dragging these monstrous trunks. At night, in complete silence. Because any extra sound, any torchlight could attract spies. The Yuan Empire had ears everywhere. If Togan had found out about the stakes ahead of time, the plan would have collapsed like a house of cards. Look at the blueprints reconstructed by historians. This is not a chaotic palisade. This is a mathematically calculated minefield of the medieval era. Vietnamese engineers, whose names history has not preserved, did a titanic job. They studied the bottom of the Bac Dang River like a sculptor studies a piece of marble. They knew every pit, every sandbar, every current.
The stakes were not driven everywhere. That was the genius. They were placed in strategically important, narrow places, where the fairway forced ships to follow a certain course. The fangs were driven in at an angle of 45 degrees, facing the current. Why? So that when a ship at full speed, or under the influence of the current, hits them, the stake does not break, but works like a can opener, entering the hull wood deeper and deeper under the weight of the vessel itself. An iron tip was put on each stake. Rusty, rough iron, forged in village smithies, ready to meet the bottoms of imperial junks. But Tran Hung Dao's main ally is not people and not iron. His main ally hangs in the sky, the moon. The Vietnamese have lived by the sea for centuries. They knew the rhythm of the tides better than their own heartbeat. In this region, tides are powerful. The water level difference can reach several meters. The general bet on exactly this. At high tide, the water rises and completely hides the fields of stakes. The river looks innocent, smooth, safe, an ideal road for a fleet. But as soon as the ebb begins, the water leaves rapidly, exposing thousands of sharp pikes. The calculation was frighteningly simple. Lure the enemy into the trap at high water, when the stakes are invisible, and keep him there until nature pulls the flush lever. This requires nerves of steel. If they miscalculate by an hour, the Mongol ships will slip over the stakes without touching them with their keels. If they mistake the depth of driving by a meter, the trap will become a useless fence against which the ships will simply bump and float on. Think about what these people felt, standing in cold water. Their hands rubbed to blood, their backs aching from superhuman strain. The jungle around teeming with mosquitoes and leeches. But they continue to drive piles, blow after blow, the dull sound of wood hitting wood, absorbed by the damp fog. They destroyed entire forests to create this underwater forest of death. 3 fields of barriers, 3 lines of defense meant to work as one complex spring. This was not work for the faint of heart. Every driven stake is a prayer that it finds its target. Let them come, an old veteran surely thought, wiping dirt from his face. Let them come with their banners and golden armor. The river equalizes everyone. Historians often argue, did the Mongols know about such tactics? After all, half a century earlier, in the year 938, on this same river, No Quinn had already destroyed a Chinese fleet in a similar way. Did imperial intelligence really not read old chronicles? The answer is cynical and simple. Arrogance blinds more than gouged out eyes. The Mongols believed that the past did not matter. They were the new power. They conquered the world with cavalry. Why should they be afraid of some sticks in the water?
They believed in the tonnage of their ships,
They thought their vessels would simply break any obstacles with their mass. What irony! It is precisely mass that will destroy them. The work is finished. The last stake is driven into the silty bottom and hidden under the thickness of brown water. The Bach River again looks like an ordinary tropical river. Lazy current, floating branches, herons on the bank. No traces of giant construction. Nature knows how to keep secrets if you make a deal with it. The Vietnamese army disappears into the thickets, dissolves into the landscape. Silence hangs over the delta. This is not a peaceful silence. It is the silence of a cocked hammer. The trap is assembled, greased, and set. The spring is compressed to the limit. Now only one element is needed for the mechanism to work. Bait is needed. Something so tempting, so annoying is needed to force a cautious predator to forget instincts and rush into pursuit without looking under its feet. Tran Hung Dao knows that Togan's pride is the key. The prince wants not just victory, he wants the humiliation of the enemy. He wants to see running backs. And the general is ready to give him that spectacle. Do you hear that splash of oars? It is the light, maneuverable Vietnamese vanguard coming out of hiding. Small, nimble boats against floating fortresses. It looks like madness, like an ant's attempt to stop an elephant. But this is exactly what the beginning of the end for the Great Armada looks like. The sun rises over the bay, illuminating the stage where, in a few hours, one of the bloodiest dramas in the history of naval battles will unfold. The water begins to rise. The tide hides death under its blanket, inviting guests to the table. Welcome to hell, gentlemen conquerors. Take your seats. The show begins. The fog over the mouth of the Bach River begins to dissipate, and what opens to the gaze of the Mongol lookouts causes them not fear, but a contemptuous smirk. Flotilla comes out to meet the greatest armada in the world, looking like a joke. It is the Vietnamese vanguard. Light, low-sided boats, twitchy sampans. Compared to the floating fortresses of the Yuan Empire, they seem like toy ships made by children from wood chips. They do not go in a straight formation. They do not shine with gold and lacquer. They look pathetic. For Prince Togan, standing on the high bridge of his flagship, this sight is like a red rag to a bull. After months of an exhausting campaign, after diseases, heat, and endless ambushes in the jungle, the enemy has finally deigned to come out onto open water. Here they are, in the palm of his hand. No trees to hide behind, no mountain trails, only water and wood. Look at them, the Mongol captains surely think. Have they come to surrender? Or are they just madmen seeking a quick death? The Vietnamese do not surrender. They begin the attack. But it is a strange attack. They approach within arrow flight distance, loose a liquid volley, shout insults, and immediately turn around. A performance worthy of an Oscar for best acting in a war drama begins. Vietnamese rowers lean on the oars, portraying panic. Their boats wag, collide, the formation crumbles. This is a classic simulation of flight. The oldest trick that the Mongols themselves used hundreds of times in the steppes, luring European knights and Russian princes under the strike of their archers. What irony of fate! The people who conquered the world with feigned retreat are now buying into this same trick themselves. Why? Because on the water, they are not at home. On the water, their steppe wolf instincts are dulled. Here they see only what they want to see. A weak, broken opponent running with his tail between his legs. Togan gives the order that Tran Hung Dao has been waiting for. Forward! Catch and destroy! No mercy! The Empire comes into motion. Imagine that sound. Thousands of drums set the rhythm. Tens of thousands of oars strike the water. Huge sails with dragons fill with wind. The armada, heavy and inert, begins to gain speed. It looks like an avalanche coming down from the mountains. It is impossible to stop it now. Heavy war junks and transport ships rush in pursuit of the fleeing Vietnamese. Greed blinds eyes. Every captain wants to be the first to crash his bow into the enemy's stern, to take the first trophy. The formation breaks. The discipline for which the Mongols were famous dissolves in the thrill of the hunt. They push, cut each other off, striving to enter the river mouth as deep as possible. They do not look at landmarks. They do not look at the color of the water. They look only at the backs of the fleeing Vietnamese.
And they, as if teasing, keep at shooting distance, leading the giant further and further into the throat of the trap. "Faster! Faster!" shout the officers, cracking whips over the heads of slave rowers. The armada crosses an invisible line, the point of no return. Now, in these morning hours, nature is playing on Dai Viet's side. The tide has reached its peak. The water level is maximum. The Bach Dang River is wide and full. Those same deadly stakes of ironwood that the Vietnamese drove for weeks are now hidden deep underwater. A meter, maybe a meter and a half of dark, murky water separate the keels of the Mongol ships from the fire-blackened, sharp tips. The Mongol ships pass right over them. The captains feel confident. The keel does not scrape the bottom. The depth is sufficient. The Vietnamese were bluffing, they think. The river is navigable. And this confidence becomes their sentence. They enter the very center of the prepared minefield. Hundreds of ships pack into the narrow space of the mouth like sardines in a barrel. Maneuvering here is already almost impossible, but while they are going forward, it does not matter. Imagine this scale. The entire flower of the Yuan fleet, all the emperor's pride, all the resources spent on this war are now in one narrow corridor of water. It is a triumph of logistics that has become a logistical nightmare. The Vietnamese Mosquito fleet continues its panicked retreat, drawing the enemy to pre-marked positions. Partisans on the banks, hiding in the reeds, surely grip their weapons until their knuckles turn white. They see the Mongol giants passing by. They see the faces of the enemies, distorted by excitement and hatred. Their hearts beat in their throats. Just don't give yourself away ahead of time. Just hold on. Togan is sure he has cornered the rat. He sees the Vietnamese boats slowing down. Aha! They are tired. They have nowhere to go. The river narrows. Now the heavy ships will pile on them with all their mass and crush them like eggshells. He already imagines how he will write a report to his father. Total victory. The rebel fleet destroyed in their own waters. But he does not notice one detail. The wind dies down. The water, which just an hour ago was arriving rapidly, suddenly freezes. A strange, ominous calm sets in. The dead point of the tide. The moment when the ocean takes a breath before exhaling. The Mongol ships begin to lose momentum. They have gone too far. They are huddled together. They are getting in each other's way. And suddenly, the Vietnamese boats, which were just fleeing in panic, do what seems impossible. They turn around, in sync, like a school of fish on an invisible signal. There is no more panic, no chaotic movements. The rowers even out the rhythm. Archers stand up to full height. There is no more fear on the faces of the Vietnamese. Now written on them is the cold, angry determination of a predator that has lured prey into a pit and is now looking down at it. The drums of Dai Viet change rhythm. It is no longer the disorderly noise of retreat. It is a crisp,
heavy battle beat. Boom, 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 like hammer blows on a coffin lid. Togan frowns. What is happening? Why aren't they running? Why did they turn around right under the nose of an armada capable of grinding them into dust? Is this madness? Or... And at that moment he feels it. A barely perceptible change. The ship under his feet shudders slightly. The water around the sides begins to move differently. It no longer flows inland. It begins to leave. The ebb has begun. Slowly, inch by inch, the river level begins to drop. A huge mass of water rushes back to the sea, dragging with it everything that floats on its surface. But leaving is not so simple. The current becomes fast, treacherous. Mongol captains start shouting orders, trying to turn their bulky vessels to meet the enemy head-on. But the tightness gives them no space. They push against each other with their sides, break oars. Commotion begins. Mild concern begins to grow into anxiety, and under the murky surface of the water, invisible to the eye, thousands of razor-sharp stakes of ironwood are slowly but inevitably approaching the bottoms of the ships. Death is already here. It is just waiting for gravity to do its job. The trap has slammed shut. But the beast inside is still alive, still full of strength and fury. He has not yet understood that he is already dead. He thinks it is just a hitch. He thinks he will turn around now and sweep away the insolent ones. Poor, naive conquerors. The Empire taught them to look at the horizon, but did not teach them to look under their feet. And in this river, on this land, it is the land and water that dictate the rules. Time is up. The ocean is taking its water back, and it is not going to return the ships. Nature does not negotiate. It has no pity, no honor, and no concept of rules of war. It simply acts. And at the moment when the ebb on the Bach River gained full force, the Mongol armada learned what it is like when geography itself declares war on you. First, there was a sound. Not a scream, not an explosion, not the clashing of weapons. It was a low, guttural grinding coming from somewhere below, from the very depths, as if giant claws are running along the wooden belly of the ship. Vibration went through the decks, resonating in the legs of thousands of soldiers. Horses in the holds neighed first. Animals always sense trouble before people. Their anxiety, turning into panic, became the overture to the catastrophe. Imagine you were the captain of a Yuan war junk. You were just chasing the enemy. Your sails are full of wind. Your blood is boiling with excitement. And suddenly, impact. A sharp, blunt impact that knocks people off their feet like bowling pins. Your ship, this floating fortress weighing hundreds of tons, crashes into something invisible in the middle of seemingly deep water. Inertia is a heartless thing. The hull of the ship continues to move forward, but the bottom is already standing still. A monstrous crack rings out. Ribs are breaking. Thick planking boards are shattering into splinters, unable to withstand the pressure. "We've run aground!" someone screams. If only it were that simple. A shoal is sand. A shoal forgives mistakes. Here, the bottom decided to strike back. From the murky water that is rapidly leaving, exposing the terrible truth, they appear. Dragon's teeth. Black, slimy pillars of ironwood with rusty tips. They don't just stop ships, they rip them open. The Vietnamese engineering calculation was diabolically precise. Stakes driven at a 45-degree angle facing the current work like perfect traps. The stronger the current, the faster the ship goes. The deeper the stake enters its belly. This is the physics of murder. The ship impales itself on the stake, like a beetle on an entomologist's pin. Water rushes into the holds. Dirty, mixed with silt and wood chips, it floods rice supplies, gunpowder, people. But the real nightmare begins not with the first ship. It begins with a chain reaction. The Mongol fleet went in a tight formation, too tight. When the front ships suddenly stopped, turning into real estate, the rear ones did not have time to brake. Braking distance does not exist on water. The giants coming from behind crash at full speed into the sterns of those already caught by the trap. Impact. Another impact. Wood crumbles against wood. Masts break and fall like mown trees in a forest, crushing people on the decks. Rigging tangles, creating a deadly web from which there is no escape. The battle order that Kublai's generals were so proud of turns into a pile of garbage. This is no longer a fleet. It is a giant, moving landfill in the middle of the river. A traffic jam. A deadlock from which there is no exit. Ships are turned by the current. They pile onto each other's sides, blocking maneuvering. Those trying to turn run into new stakes. The gnashing of tearing wood drowns out even the screams of officers. "Back! Full back!" captains scream. But back where? Their own are pushing from behind. To the left, a shoal. To the right, the burning eyes of Vietnamese partisans. And below, a forest of stakes holding the keels in a death grip. The water continues to leave. With every minute, more stakes are exposed. Now the Mongols see what is killing them. This sight is capable of driving one mad. An entire field of black pikes sticking out of the water as far as the eye can see. They are everywhere. Ships hang on them, listing at unnatural angles. Decks become slippery slides from which people roll straight into the water. But the water below is not salvation. There, between the stakes, are whirlpools and death. Inside the ships reigns the hell of claustrophobia. Imagine the hold of a transport ship. Darkness, water arriving, hundreds of horses thrashing in hysteria, breaking legs and partitions. People trying to get out to the top, but hatches are blocked by debris of masts. The scream of those buried alive is scarier than any weapon. Prince Togan, on his flagship, looks at this picture with horror. His golden dreams of conquest turn into a pile of wet splinters. He sees his invincible armada, a minute ago a single organism, now paralyzed. They are stuck. They are sitting ducks in a shooting gallery. Aggression gives way to confusion. The greatest army in the world, accustomed to maneuver warfare in the steppe, found itself walled up in wooden boxes in the middle of a river. They have swords, but who to chop?
They have bows, but who to shoot at? The enemy is not boarding. The enemy simply allowed them to kill themselves. It is a psychological knockdown. Soldiers see their ships, the symbol of their power and safety, betraying them. The floor goes out from under their feet, literally. Listing vessels throw archers into the water, where heavy armor drags them to the bottom in seconds. Mongols try to push off with boat hooks from the bottom, from other ships, from the stakes themselves. Useless. Ironwood holds tight. The Bach River has grabbed the Yuan Empire by the throat and is not going to unclench its jaws. The heavy smell of damp wood and fear hangs in the air. Panic is a contagious disease, and here, in the cramped space of interlocked ships, the epidemic spreads instantly. Discipline, held together by fear of commanders, collapses in the face of a more terrible enemy. Inevitability. Officers lose control. Orders drown in the general roar of catastrophe. Someone tries to lower lifeboats, but they are smashed against the sides of neighboring vessels or run onto the same ubiquitous stakes. There is no salvation. It is at this moment, when chaos has reached its apogee, when the Mongols have finally realized they are trapped, that an ominous pause ensues. The Vietnamese boats that led them here have frozen in the distance. They are not attacking. They are waiting for something.
For what? The wind changes. Now it blows in the face of the immobilized fleet. And with the wind comes a new smell. Acrid, sweetish, disturbing. The smell of resin and sulfur. Those who have been through wars in China know this smell. They know what it means. And if until this moment the Mongols experienced fear, now they are seized by icy terror. Because being trapped in a wooden box in the middle of a river is bad. But being trapped in a wooden box when fire is approaching you is a sentence. Tran Hung Dao did not just stop them. He cooked them
like a dish. And now it is time to light the oven. The trap has slammed shut completely. The key is thrown into the murky water. There is no way out. There is only the waiting for the end. And it will be bright. Have you ever seen water burn? Unlikely. It is an unnatural sight. Water should extinguish, save, give coolness. But on the Bach River, the laws of physics gave way to the laws of hatred. First, smoke appeared. Thick, black, greasy smoke that covered the sun, turning noon into twilight. And then, death floated out of this twilight. Fire rafts. This is not a complex engineering solution. It is primitive, but absolute cruelty. Rough bundles of bamboo and dry wood, generously doused with pitch, pork fat, and oil. The Vietnamese set them on fire upstream and simply pushed them into the water. The wind and tide did the rest. The wind, which in the morning filled the sails of the Mongols, leading them to victory, has now become their executioner. It drove the burning platform straight into the center of the huddled, immobilized armada. Imagine this moment. Thousands of Mongols on the decks see a wall of fire approaching. They cannot move. Their ships are impaled on stakes, interlocked by masts, blocked by neighbors. They see their fate, and it approaches with the speed of the river current. Impact. The first raft crashes into the side of a transport vessel loaded with grain and fabric. Dry wood flares up like gunpowder. Fire jumps to sails, to rigging, to people's clothes. A chain reaction begins. Fire is a living being, and here, in this wooden tightness, a buffet is set for it. The ships stand so close that the flame simply steps from deck to deck. One burning ship sets fire to 2 neighboring ones. 2 set fire to 4. Geometric progression of destruction. The Bach River turns into an oven. The air temperature rises so much that it becomes painful to breathe. Lungs are burned by scorching air mixed with soot. And at this moment, when the Mongols are busy fighting the fire, when panic reaches an absolute peak, the Vietnamese fleet returns. Those same small, nimble boats that the imperial officers laughed at. No one is laughing now. The Vietnamese turn around and surround the burning armada. They keep a safe distance, out of reach of the fire, but ideally positioned for shooting. The sky darkens with arrows. This is not a figure of speech. Thousands of arrows fall on the decks, finding their targets among the figures darting in the smoke. The Mongols have nowhere to hide. On one side, a wall of fire, on the other, a shower of iron. Click, whistle, impact. Click, whistle, impact. The monotonous rhythm of slaughter. The Vietnamese are in no hurry. Why? The enemy isn't going anywhere. This is no longer a war. It is a shooting range. It is a cleanup. General Tran Hung Dao is not just defeating the enemy, he is annihilating him. His plan did not provide for taking prisoners. Viet boarding teams, these sea devils, begin their work. They approach the outer ships that are not yet engulfed in flames but are already stuck. In their hands are not swords, but hooks and short cleavers. They know these waters.
They know their boats. They jump onto the decks of high junks like cats. Close combat in fire conditions is the quintessence of chaos. Mongols, the best warriors of the steppe, are helpless here. Their longbows are useless in cramped quarters. Their heavy armor, saving from a saber, here becomes an anchor. Slip on a wet, blood-covered deck, and you are a corpse. Fall overboard, and you go to the bottom like a stone. Many Mongols jump into the water themselves, saving themselves from the heat. But the water does not accept them. The river boils from falling, burning debris, and in the water, they are waited for. Vietnamese soldiers with spears finish off those trying to swim out.
Have you ever heard the expression rivers of blood?
Usually, it is a metaphor. But chroniclers claim that on that day, the water in the mouth of the Bac Dang River really changed color. A pink trail stretched for kilometers downstream, mixing with black ash and gray cinders. It was a total deconstruction of a myth. The myth of the invincibility of the Yuan Empire. Look at that ship in the center of the jam. On the bridge stands an officer in rich armor. He shouts, waves a sword, tries to rally the men, but no one hears him. The roar of the flames drowns out everything. A mast, undermined by fire, falls with a crash across the deck, breaking the back of the ship and people. The officer disappears in a cloud of sparks. This is the end of the command structure. The army has turned into a crowd. The crowd has turned into a herd of crazed animals. The instinct of self-preservation erases loyalty, honor, and discipline.
People fight each other for a place in a lifeboat that will capsize in a minute anyway. The scene resembles the underworld painted by a mad artist. Screams of the dying, crackling of wood, hissing of steam when fire meets water. And above all this, the impassive gaze of Vietnamese archers, methodically sending arrow after arrow into this cauldron. "Surrender," someone merciful might have shouted. But there is no mercy here. Dai Viet tolerated threats for too long. Too many times their homes were burned. Now they are repaying the debt. With interest. Fire for fire. It is hell on water. A floating crematorium for tens of thousands of souls who came here for easy glory, but found only hot, agonizing death. Vietnamese shock troops use special long bamboo poles with hooks to pull Mongols off the sides straight into the water. It looks almost like fishing. Terrible, bloody fishing where no one needs the catch. By the middle of the day, the pride of Kublai's fleet ceased to exist as a military unit. It was simply a graveyard. A burning graveyard. But even in hell, there are those trying to survive. Prince Togan. He is still alive. His flagship, thanks to its size and position in the center of the formation, has not yet burned to the ground, although fire is already licking its sides. Around him are loyal bodyguards who understand. There is no salvation on the water. The fleet is doomed. Ships are sinking or burning. Staying here means burning alive or becoming food for the fishes. There is only one ghostly chance. Land. The riverbank seems close. There, beyond the strip of silt and reeds, solid ground is visible. There is no fire there. There are no stakes piercing the bottom. There you can stand on your feet, draw a sword, and die as a warrior, not as a rat in a barrel. Togan makes a decision. He abandons his magnificent ship. He abandons most of his army to die in the fire. He and the remnants of his elite guard transfer to surviving light boats, or simply jump into the water, trying to reach the shore. They think the worst is behind them. They think they have escaped the fiery trap. Fools. They are trading one death for another. They are running from a burning house straight into the mouth of a tiger. They look at the green jungle on the shore and see salvation in it.
But the jungles of Dai Viet do not save strangers. The jungles devour them. The water behind their backs continues to burn, painting the sky in the colors of the apocalypse. And ahead awaits a green wall. And this wall also has eyes. And it also has teeth. Landing on the shore is not the end of the nightmare. It is the beginning of its second chapter. Their feet touch solid ground, but there is no joy. There is only a gag reflex. People fall face down into the gray, sticky silt, spitting out salty water and soot.
They crawl like amphibians away from the burning river, away from the screams of their comrades being eaten by fire. Welcome to dry land. Did you think this was salvation? You were mistaken. You just changed the form of execution. Prince Togan, son of the almighty Khan, now looks not like a viceroy of gods, but like a wet rat. Mud drips from his expensive silk robes. He rips off his insignia. Gold weighs too much now and is worth too little. In the jungle, titles do not matter. Here the currency is one, survival. And the exchange rate is predatory. The remnants of the army gather on the shore. It is a pathetic sight. Where are those proud Tumans that trampled the universe with hooves? Where are the shiny breastplates? Now it is a rabble. Burned, shell-shocked, devoid of weapons, they huddle together. Many do not even have shoes. Boots were sucked in by river mud. But the main thing they do not have is horses. A Mongol without a horse is a warrior deprived of half a soul. On their short, hardy steeds, they were centaurs, lords of space and speed. On foot, they become clumsy, slow, and vulnerable. The steppe gave them a view to the very horizon. And here? Here there is no horizon. They turn their backs to the river, which became the grave of their ambitions, and look forward. Before them is a wall, a green, dense, impenetrable wall of jungle. It does not look like the forests they saw in the north. This is a predatory ecosystem. Vines intertwine like snakes. Trees stand so tightly that one can barely squeeze a shoulder between them. Togan gives the order to move. Where? To the north, toward the border. It is hundreds of kilometers to China, but one cannot stand on the open shore. The Vietnamese fleet will soon finish off the survivors on the water and land troops. Need to go under the cover of the forest. Hide. They enter the green hell. Immediately, the light dims. The crowns of giant trees close overhead, forming a dome that does not let the sun through. Below reigns eternal gloom and stuffiness. Humidity is such that the air can be drunk. Clothes, already wet, instantly soak with sweat and stick to the body like a second skin. Breathing is difficult. Every breath is an effort. But the most terrible thing is the sounds, or more accurately, their absence. The jungle should be noisy. Birds, monkeys, cicadas. A tropical forest usually screams in thousands of voices. But now the forest is silent. This silence is unnatural. It presses on the ears. It screams that someone is here. Someone who made nature hold its breath. Mongols walk in a column, tripping over roots, hacking a path through thickets. Swords designed for chopping heads now chop vines. The blade dulls. Arms weaken. They feel eyes on them. Hundreds, thousands of invisible eyes watch their every step. Have you ever felt goosebumps running down your back, even though no one touched you? It is the sixth sense, the victim's instinct. Mongols turn their heads, peering into the green thicket. There, behind huge fern leaves,
There, in the tangle of branches, no one, only shadows. But shadows here know how to kill. The first death comes silently. A soldier in the rear guard simply falls. No scream, no sound of a blow. Comrades run up to him. A small, almost toy arrow sticks out of his neck. A blowgun. Weapon of savages, as imperial strategists would say. But the poison on the tip does not know it is primitive. It simply stops the heart in a few beats. Panic runs through the ranks like an electric current. Where is the enemy? Where did they shoot from? Soldiers raise bows, but there are no targets. Shoot at bushes? That is only wasting arrows, of which few remain anyway. They speed up their pace, but the forest does not let them run. Rotten litter slips underfoot.
Thorns tear clothes and skin. Insects, mosquitoes, ants, some buzzing creatures, pounce on fresh blood. The Vietnamese do not engage in open combat. Why? They are at home. They know every path, every ravine. They are ghosts. They appear for a second, strike, and disappear. Whistle. Another man falls, clutching his thigh. A spear flew out of the thick grass, pierced the leg, and disappeared along with the owner. The wounded man screams. His scream echoes under the vaults of the forest, giving away the squad's position even more. Togan realizes they are not just being pursued, they are being herded. Like beaters herd a beast on a hunt, psychological pressure grows with every minute. The Mongol army is used to being the hunter. They are used to seeing fear in the enemy's eyes. And here they do not even see the enemy himself. They fight emptiness, the rustle of foliage, their own shadow. It drives them crazy. "Come out and fight!" yells some centurion, losing his composure. He hacks a bush with a saber in a fit of powerless rage. In response, a quiet chuckle from somewhere above, and a stone thrown from a sling pierces his temple. They are afraid of every tree. Every trunk can hide a marksman. Every vine can be a trap. They look under their feet, afraid to step on a wolf pit, a camouflaged hole with stakes at the bottom. And they step. Crunch of branches, dull thud of a body against the ground, howl of pain. This march turns into torture. There is no water. The water found in puddles is poisoned or teeming with parasites. Food remained on the burned ships. Hunger, thirst, heat, and fear suck out the will faster than any battle. Togan looks at his people. In their eyes, he sees not devotion, but animal terror. They look at him with a silent question. Where did you lead us? Why didn't we die there on the river? It would have been faster there. But the most terrible discovery awaits them ahead. They think the forest is endless, that they are just lost. But Vietnamese guides, invisible shepherds of this herd, lead them along a very specific route. The forest begins to change. Trees part, but not to give freedom. Paths begin to merge into one. The terrain becomes more mountainous, slopes become steeper. The jungle squeezes them, directing the flow of fugitives into the only possible channel. The Mongols think they are breaking through to salvation. In reality, they are walking down a corridor whose walls are made of granite and hatred. They are going where not mosquitoes and blowguns await them, but the main forces of the Vietnamese army. The sun begins to lean towards sunset, painting treetops in a bloody color. But below, under the canopy of the forest, night is already falling. And this night will be long. Because in the dark, the jungle comes alive for real. Togan stumbles, falls to his knees, breathes heavily. He wants to curse this land, this forest, this accursed river. But he has no strength, even for curses. He gets up and trudges on. They walk,
step by step, toward their fate. They think the worst is the fire behind. How wrong they are. The worst is what awaits them in the dark. The war of ghosts is just beginning. The sun falls below the horizon like a severed head, and the jungle plunges into darkness. If you thought the day march was hell, then you simply did not know what a real night in the tropics is. During the day, you at least saw your death. At night, you can only hear its breathing. For the remnants of Togan's army, the night becomes not a time of rest, but a separate type of torture. Imagine sitting in a black, thick void. Fires cannot be lit. Fire will attract shooters. You sit back to back with a comrade, clutching a useless sword in sweaty hands. You do not sleep. Sleeping here means dying. And then the sound begins. Boom. Boom. Boom.
Somewhere deep in the thicket, drums begin to beat. Not loud, not solemn, monotonous, rhythmic. This is not music, it is the pulse of madness. The Vietnamese do not attack immediately. They know that an exhausted, hungry, frightened enemy is the best enemy. They use sound to get inside the Mongols' heads. Drums beat for an hour, 2, 3. The rhythm knocks off breathing. It does not let one close eyes. As soon as eyelids grow heavy, the rhythm changes, or a sharp, piercing shriek of some local pipe rings out, from which the heart jumps to the throat. This is terror, elevated to the rank of art. "Where are they? Show yourselves!" soldiers whisper, peering into the darkness until their eyes hurt. But the darkness is silent. And then, without warning, death flies out of this darkness. It is a war of ghosts. Vietnamese saboteurs, smeared with mud and charcoal, merge with the night. They crawl up to the camp at arm's length. They do not engage in battle. Why? They slit a sentry's throat and disappear before the body hits the ground. They kidnap people from the edge of the camp. Only a short, strangled wheeze is heard, a rustle of foliage, and the person is gone. In the morning, only his helmet will be found, or nothing will be found. Paranoia spreads faster than the plague. Soldiers begin to fear each other. In the dark, any silhouette seems like an enemy. Friendly fire becomes the norm. Someone twitched, someone cried out in sleep, and his neighbor, crazed with fear, plunges a knife into him. The army devours itself from within. Tran Hung Dao understood. To destroy a large force, you need to fragment its unity. Mongols are strong when they are a single fist, but here, in the night forest, each of them is a lonely, trembling child. And then there is thirst. Water in the tropics is everywhere, but it cannot be drunk. It is nature's mockery. People who have lost liters of sweat are ready to drink from any puddle. And the Vietnamese know this. Retreating troops stumble upon wells. What a miracle! Abandoned villages, and in them, water. Soldiers rush to the log frames, pushing away officers. They drink greedily, choking. But an hour later, the nightmare begins. People writhe on the ground, tearing their bellies with fingernails. The wells are poisoned. Rotting animal corpses, plant poisons. Partisans turned sources of life into cups of poison. This is scorched earth tactics. Only here, the very possibility of survival is scorched. Those who did not die immediately envy the dead. Dysentery and fever mow down ranks more effectively than arrows. The army drags a tale of sick, moaning, dying people behind it. They cannot be abandoned. This will undermine morale even more.
but dragging them is impossible. Togan's officers try to maintain at least some semblance of order. "Hold the formation! Don't wander off!" they hiss. But discipline is a concept from a world where there is breakfast, clean clothes, and hope. Here, in the world of shadows and pain, only instinct works. The enemy is everywhere and nowhere. The Vietnamese don't just know the forest, they are the forest. They move through the treetops. Mongols hear a rustle above, raise their heads, but see only black branches against a black sky. And from there, invisible nets, heavy stones, or pots with snakes fall on them. It is a war of nerves. Every second of waiting for a blow exhausts more than the blow itself. You walk and wait. 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 You flinch at the fall of a dry branch. You are ready to scream from tension. And when an arrow finally flies, some feel relief. Finally. The end. By morning, the drums die down. But the silence is even scarier, because dawn reveals a terrifying picture. People see how many of them are left. They see the corpses of those who died at night from poison or knife. They see empty places where their friends slept. The army is melting. It is not defeated in a general battle. It evaporates. Togan, with eyes red from insomnia, looks at the map, which is long turned into a useless piece of paper. The paths drawn there do not exist. Landmarks lie. The forest changes like a living organism, driving them in the needed direction. Mongols think they are choosing the path. What naivety. They are being led. Vietnamese scouts, invisible shepherds, carefully, with pinpricks of arrows and false trails, direct this huge, bleeding mass of people to one specific point. Soldiers walk with heads down. They no longer look around. They have no strength to fear. They have only the mechanical habit of moving their legs. Left, right, until you fall. They dream of battle, of a fair wall-to-wall fight. Let there be 10 times more enemies, but let them be visible. Let them come out into the field. A Mongol wants to die with a sword in his hand, looking into the opponent's eyes, not writhing from diarrhea in the bushes or receiving an arrow in the back from the darkness. But Tran Hung Dao does not give them such a gift. He is not a knight from romance novels. He is a pragmatist. He knows heroism is for the dead, victory is for the living. And he continues to wear down the giant, slice by slice, drop by drop. He peels layers of flesh off the Mongol army until only a bare skeleton remains. The forest thickens. Mountain slopes become steeper, gorges narrower. The air becomes colder, but this cold does not invigorate. It is the cold of a grave crypt. The army enters the final phase of its death march. They are still walking, but they are already dead. Their bodies just haven't received the order to stop yet. Ahead, among the rocks, the climax awaits them. But for now, only an endless green corridor saturated with fear, sweat, and the sweetish smell of decay. The War of Ghosts has done its job. It broke the spirit. Now all that remains is to break the body. The jungle finally retreats, but not to give freedom. It gives way to stone. Before the exhausted column of Mongols, the Hum-Tu Gorge opens up, a narrow, winding crevice cutting through the mountain range like a scar from a blow of a giant sword. For Togan's soldiers, this gloomy corridor looks like the gates to paradise. The walls of the gorge are sheer and high, but ahead, where the rocks meet the sky, light is visible. This is the way north, the way home. They speed up their pace. Legs, rubbed to bloody calluses, find new strength. People push, striving to enter the narrows faster, to leave the accursed green hell that tormented them for the last day. They do not understand that the jungle did not let them go. The jungle simply handed them over to another executioner, crueler, more ruthless. Look at the map. Hum Tu Gorge is a classic bottleneck.
The only artery connecting the coastal lowlands with the mountain passes of the border. Any army retreating by this route is obliged to pass through this stone gut. Tran Hung Dao was not a soothsayer. He didn't need to read bones. He simply looked at the landscape and poked a finger at the map. Here we will close the lid. The Mongols are drawn into the gorge. Thousands of people, remnants of horses, stretchers with wounded. A stream of living flesh fills the narrow bottom of the canyon from edge to edge. It becomes crowded. Shoulder presses against shoulder. The smell of unwashed bodies, rotting wounds, and fear concentrates in this enclosed space, becoming almost tangible. Walls grow upward, 10 meters, 20, 50. The stone is cold, gray, indifferent. Echoes play mean jokes here. Any sound, any clang of metal or moan amplifies, reflecting off the rocks, creating a hum like a swarm of angry wasps. They pass the middle of the gorge, the narrowest place.
The jaws, as locals call it.
Here, two riders can barely pass each other. The army stretches into a thin, vulnerable snake. And then, above, on the edge of the cliff, something changes. The sun is momentarily obscured by a shadow. One shadow. 10. Hundreds. Vietnamese soldiers who waited here for days, motionless as the rocks themselves, finally stand up to full height. They do not hide. They no longer need to hide. They look down at the teeming mass of enemies like a cook looks at ingredients in a cauldron. A whistle rings out, short, sharp, like the crack of a whip, and the sky falls to the ground. This is not a metaphor. From the edges of the gorge fly not arrows, that would be too merciful. Boulders fly. Huge chunks of granite that bounce off the walls with a roar, gaining deadly speed, and crash into the crowd below. Imagine what happens to a human body when a 100-kilogram stone falling from the height of a 5-story building hits it. Armor? It crumples like paper. Helmets are pressed into shoulders. People simply disappear under the rain of stones, turning into a bloody mess. Screams of horror are drowned out by the roar of the rockfall. Dust rises in a column, clogging eyes and lungs. But this is only the beginning. Following the stones, archers begin to work. They stand on the edges of the cliff, as if at a shooting range. They don't even need to aim. There is no miss below. Any arrow loosed into the gorge will find flesh. Arrows fly in clouds, piercing the air with a whistle, and stick into the human mass. "Shields! Raise shields!" yell officers, trying to shout over the chaos. But there are almost no shields left. They were abandoned during the flight from the ships. They were lost in the forest. Those few who have them try to cover their heads, but it is useless against boulders. The gorge turns into a meat grinder. In the most direct, technical sense of the word, mechanical destruction of manpower. Mongols try to run, but where?
Forward? There is a blockage.
Vietnamese sappers brought down a cliff, blocking the exit. Back? There, their own are pushing, those who have not yet entered the kill zone and do not understand what is happening. The rear ranks push the front ones right under the rockfall. A stampede begins. The most terrible death is not from the enemy's sword, but from the boot of a comrade. People fall, knocked down by panic, and they do not get up again. Thousands of feet trample them into the stony ground. Horses, crazed with noise and pain, thrash in the tightness, kicking and biting everyone around. Bones break with a dry crack
that drowns in the general howl. This is claustrophobia become reality. You are squeezed from all sides. You cannot raise a hand to strike. You cannot breathe deeply because your rib cage is compressed by the bodies of neighbors. You feel ribs cracking under the pressure of the crowd.
You see the eyes of the person opposite, just as insane, popping out of their orbits from horror as yours. The Vietnamese above work methodically. They drop stones, logs, pour boiling oil. For them, this is not a battle. It is heavy physical labor. Lift, throw, look at the result. Lift, throw. No rage, only cold efficiency. Amidst this hell, Togan tries to preserve his life. His bodyguards, loyal to the end, create a living dome over their prince, taking arrows and stones upon themselves. They hack a path through their own soldiers, killing compatriots to save the Khan's son. What irony. To survive, they have to kill Mongols more effectively than the Vietnamese do. The bottom of the gorge is quickly covered with a layer of bodies. The wounded try to crawl over corpses, but they too are trampled. Blood does not have time to soak into the ground. It flows in streams, collecting in puddles in depressions, mixing with dust and dirt. The smell of blood becomes so thick that it makes one dizzy. At some point, resistance ceases. It becomes physically impossible. The army has turned into jelly, into an amorphous, screaming mass that simply wants this to end, at any cost, even the cost of death. Some soldiers simply sit on the ground, cover their heads with their hands, and wait. They do not try to run. They surrender to fate. When a stone finally finds them, it looks almost like deliverance. Vietnamese shouts come from above. These are not battle cries. They are commands. They are correcting fire. They are pointing out clusters of survivors. They are directing the execution. Look at them, Tran Hung Dao might have said if he stood on the edge of the cliff. Look at the conquerors of the universe. In the steppe, they were lions. Here, they are rats in a bucket. Hum Tu Gorge became the final chord in the symphony of defeat. If, on the Bach Dang River, the fleet was destroyed, then here, the spirit was destroyed. Not just an army died here. An idea died here. The idea that one can come to this country with a sword and leave unpunished. Hours pass. Screams become quieter. Not because the enemy has left, but because there is no one left to scream. The rockfall dies down. Archers save arrows. There are almost no targets left. Below, in the twilight of the gorge, lies a mountain of mangled bodies. It moves. Someone groans. Someone tries to get out from under the rubble, but there is no way out. The bottle is corked, and inside, only death. Those few who manage to crawl out of this slaughter, including Togan himself, will never be the same. They will leave in this gorge not only their friends and their honor, they will leave their minds there. The jaws of Hum Tu have snapped shut, and when they unclench, spitting out the remains, the world will see that of the Great Armada, only a bloody mess remains, and a lesson to descendants. Never corner yourself if you are not sure that the walls of this corner do not belong to your enemy. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the victors, messengers are already being prepared. The news of what happened in these mountains must fly to all ends of the world faster than the wind. A titan has fallen, and the crash of his fall will be heard even in the yurts of distant Mongolia. When the dust in Hum Tu Gorge finally settles, silence falls. But this is not the reverent silence found in temples. It is a deafening, ringing emptiness,
that comes when there is no one left to scream. The battle is over. The agony has begun. If you want to understand the true scale of the catastrophe, do not look at the mountains of corpses. Corpses are silent. Look at the living. Look at the man who just yesterday considered himself the viceroy of God on earth. Prince Togan, son of the great Kublai Khan, commander of the armada that was supposed to bring Southeast Asia to its knees. Now, he runs. He is not retreating, maintaining battle order. He has no standards, no drummers beating the step. He doesn't even have a horse. The great prince makes his way through the brush, tearing his hands to blood, slipping in the mud. His luxurious armor, decorated with gold chasing, lies somewhere kilometers behind, in a roadside ditch. He shed them like a snake sheds old skin. Because when death itself is chasing you, gold is too heavy. It pulls to the ground, and he wants to live. Legends say that Togan's fear was so great that at some point he hid in a copper pipe to save himself from Vietnamese arrows. Imagine this picture. The heir to the empire, lord of millions, curled up in a dark, stuffy metal gut, trembling at every sound outside.
Whether this is true or the wicked satire of the victors is no longer important. What is important is that this image became the epitaph for the entire invasion. The greatness of the Mongol Empire, which was built for decades, here in the forests of Dai Viet, shrank to the size of a copper pipe. The remnants of his army, those few lucky ones who managed to escape the fiery trap on the river and the stone sack in the mountains, no longer look like humans. They are shadows. Their eyes are empty. There is no rage in them, nor even a desire for revenge. In them is only the animal, primal instinct. To reach the border. To reach China. They walk over the corpses of their comrades. The retreat road has turned into a dotted line of abandoned weapons and dead bodies. The wounded are no longer carried. They are left. Those who fall stay lying down. No one offers a hand. The law of the pack in action. The one who runs fastest survives. The Vietnamese pursue them to the very border. But they do not engage in large battles. They simply drive the runners, like shepherds drive cattle with whip blows. They want these people to return home. Why? This is the cruel calculation of Tran Hung Dao. A dead enemy is just a corpse. He will tell nothing. But a broken, humiliated, crippled enemy who returns to China and tells what he saw, that is a weapon. Living witnesses of the nightmare. Let them tell in the garrisons of the Yuan Empire how ships burn on the water. Let them tell how the jungle eats entire tumans. Let them sow seeds of fear in the hearts of those who still only dream of conquests. Togan reaches the border. He crosses the line separating hell from the empire. But he feels no relief, because he knows the most terrible trial awaits him ahead. He will have to look his father in the eye. How to explain to Kublai, the lord of half the world, that you lost everything? How to explain that 500 warships turned into firewood? That tens of thousands of the best warriors, veterans of the conquest of song, are now feeding fish and worms in a foreign land? That the treasury emptied by millions of taels of silver, and in return the empire received only shame? This is the collapse not just of a military campaign, it is the collapse of a myth. For decades, the world lived in the conviction that the Mongols were invincible, that resistance was futile, that if the Khan snapped his fingers, cities would fall. This myth was their main weapon.
Fear opened the gates of fortresses even before the siege engines began to work. And here, a small country on the edge of the inhabited world took this myth and broke it over its knee. It turns out that demons from the underworld are also people of flesh and blood. They drown when their ships are holed. They burn when doused with oil. They run when they are scared. They die just as ugly and pathetically as any other mortals.
The battlefields along the Bach River and in the Hum Gorge go quiet. Looters and locals come here. They look at mountains of twisted metal and charred wood. This is a graveyard of ambitions. Here lie helmets with horsetails, curved sabers, debris of chariots. Everything the Empire was proud of, everything it scared the world with. Now it is just trash, rusting scrap that the jungle will soon swallow. The victors do not throw lavish parades on the bones. The Vietnamese are too pragmatic for that. They start cleaning up. Bodies need to be burned or buried so that an epidemic does not start. The river needs to be cleared of sunken ships to fish again. Life goes on. But the air has changed. There is no longer the smell of doom in it. Have you ever seen a giant tree fall? First, a crack is heard, then it slowly, as if reluctantly, leans. And only at the very end does it collapse with a crash that shakes the earth. The Mongol Empire still stands.
It is still huge and dangerous. But here, in Vietnam, its roots have been cut. Togan, dirty, ragged, stripped of honor, rides north. He is alive, but perhaps he envies those who remained in the river, because their suffering is over, and he has to live with this shame until the end of his days. He has to live with the memory of how he led an invincible armada into the dragon's mouth, and the dragon snapped its jaws shut. The Titan didn't just stumble. The Titan fell face down in the mud, and the whole world heard the splat. This war showed that size does not matter if you have no brains, that brute force breaks against flexibility, that 1,000,000 soldiers are powerless against one general who knows how to listen to his land. Kublai Khan in his palace in Dadu does not yet know the details. He is waiting for messengers with news of victory. He waits for gifts and slaves. Instead, he will receive his trembling son and the story of how the Great Armada ceased to exist. History does not forgive arrogance. It writes its lessons in blood. And in the year 1288, it wrote one of the boldest and reddest headlines. No one is invincible. The Yuan Empire will exist for some time, but its golden age ended here, in the murky waters of the Bach River. The wound inflicted by Dai Viet is not fatal to the state, but it is fatal to reputation. And empires, as is known, rest on reputation. The sun sets over the battlefield, illuminating the last smoking skeletons of ships. Nature begins to take its toll. The tide comes again, washing blood from the shores. The river is indifferent. It has seen hundreds of wars, and will see hundreds more. It just flows, carrying into the ocean the ashes of an empire that thought it could command the tides. How wrong they were. Silence. In the throne room of Khan Balik, the capital of the great Yuan Empire, there is silence. But this is not the respectful silence of subjects. It is a heavy, viscous silence, in which one can hear dreams of world domination crumbling. Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, ruler of China and Mongolia, a man whose name makes kings from Poland to Korea tremble, listens to the report. He does not need details. He does not need descriptions of burning ships or screams of the dying in Hum Gorge. He needs only the results. And these results are catastrophic. The third invasion failed. The fleet is destroyed. The army is scattered. The son, Prince Togan, returned not with triumph, but with shame hidden in road dust. At this moment, history holds its breath. What will the Khan do? The anger of an emperor usually means a new war, even crueler, even larger. He can order the mobilization of another 500,000 people. He can cut down all the forests of China to build a new fleet, twice as large as the previous one. The empire's resources are practically limitless.
He can wipe Dai Viet off the face of the earth, even if it takes 10 years. But Kublai is not just a conqueror. He is a politician, and he knows how to count. He looks at his advisors, at maps, at the ledgers of war, and he sees the ugly truth that cannot be hidden behind slogans of greatness. War with Dai Viet is a black hole. It devours people, money, and prestige, giving nothing in return. Jungles cannot be robbed. There are no golden cities. The Vietnamese cannot be intimidated. They only snap back more angrily. The price of pride has become too high. The Yuan Empire, this insatiable beast, for the first time in its history ate its fill. And this piece got stuck in its throat. Kublai makes a decision that probably came harder to him than any order to attack. He cancels the fourth invasion. Officially, it is presented as an act of supreme mercy. Propaganda works flawlessly. The emperor allegedly pities the misguided southern barbarians and tired soldiers. But we know the truth. This is not mercy. This is an admission of defeat. For the first time, the Mongol machine, which broke the backs of dozens of nations, hit the brakes. Peace comes. But this is not a peace of friends. It is the cold, cynical peace of two predators who realized that a fight would cost both their lives. Dai Viet keeps its independence. Their kings will not bow to Mongol governors. Their laws will remain their laws. In return, they agree to pay tribute. What irony. Tran Hung Dao, who destroyed the Armada, advises his king to send an embassy to China with gifts. The Vietnamese send gold, elephants, jewelry. They even send golden statues of their monarch, as if saying, "Look, great Khan, we bow to you." Symbolically, but you will not step on our land again. This is genius diplomacy. Dai Viet buys freedom for gold, saving face for the giant. They give the empire the opportunity to claim the submission of a vassal, although in reality, this vassal just knocked out the suzerain's teeth. And what about Tran Hung Dao? The man who outplayed the empire did not become a usurper. He did not sit on the throne, although the army worshipped him. He returned to his duties, leaving behind a legacy that will survive centuries. His strategy became a textbook. His philosophy of war is not just ambush tactics. It is a deep understanding of the nature of power. He said, "The army is the fish, and the people are the water. If the water is poisoned, the fish will die." The Mongols lost not because they had bad swords. They lost because they tried to fight a people who became one with their land. They fought against tides, against heat, against every peasant in every village. The victory on the Bach River is a triumph of intellect over brute force. It is proof that knowledge is the deadliest weapon. The Vietnamese general knew the schedule of lunar cycles. The Mongol prince knew only how to demand submission. We saw the result, a graveyard of ships. Centuries passed. The Yuan Empire fell, torn by internal rebellions and corruption. Dynasties succeeded each other, borders were redrawn. But if you come to Vietnam today, to Quang Ninh province, and go out to the riverbank, you will see that memory is alive. In the 80s of the 20th century, archaeologists began excavations in the silty bottom, and they found them. The stakes. They are still there, blackened by time,
petrified pillars of ironwood. They stick out of the mud like the rotten teeth of a dragon. Radiocarbon analysis confirmed, these are the very piles. The year 1288. You can touch them. Feel this texture. This is not just wood. It is material evidence of the day when David broke Goliath's spine. These stakes are a monument not to war, but to human ingenuity and will.
They remind us that there are no hopeless situations, that even if the whole world is against you, if there is an armada of 500 ships on the horizon, and you have only a handful of boats and knowledge of the tides, you can win. But this story is also a warning to all empires, current and future. Arrogance blinds. When you become too big, you stop looking under your feet. You start believing in your own invulnerability. You think your size guarantees victory. The Mongols conquered the steppe with the hooves of horses, but in these murky waters, hooves are not needed. Here you need to know how to breathe underwater. They came to conquer the land, but the land swallowed them. The history of the Battle of Bach teaches us a harsh lesson. The size of the army does not matter if the general is an idiot. Technological superiority does not matter if you do not understand the environment in which you are fighting. And most importantly, it is impossible to defeat a people who are ready to turn their own river into a grave, just to not live on their knees. And now ask yourself a question, looking at this historical lesson. Imagine scales. On one pan, the emperor's ambitions, his desire to own the world, his wounded pride. On the other, tens of thousands of lives burned in fire, drowned in silt, crushed by stones. Was the Khan's pride worth this blood? The Mongol Empire received a lesson in humility, but paid for it with a generation of young men who never returned home. Dai Viet received freedom, but paid for it with years of terror and ruin. In war, there are no real winners. There are only survivors. And there are those who remembered the lesson. The Bakdang River flows calmly today. Fishermen cast nets where the water once boiled from burning debris. Tourists take selfies against the background of historical markers. But if you listen closely, when the wind blows from the sea and the ebb comes, it may seem that you hear the grinding of wood and the distant, fading scream of a perishing armada. It is the echo of a mistake that all great powers make when they start thinking they are stronger than nature itself. In the end, all empires turn to dust. Only history remains, and sharp stakes in dirty water, whispering to all future conquerors, try it, take the risk, but don't forget to check the tide schedule.